Good morning, this is Michael from Diamond Seed Astrology. This is going to be a relatively short video. I'm going to follow up on some of the topics, or at least one topic that was addressed in my recent interview time on the Here for the Truth podcast. So it was brought up, the idea in that's popular in human design, that neutrinos are potentially one of the mechanisms by which astrology can be considered to work. To that, I said, and I will reiterate that, yeah, sure, maybe that's a possibility. It's great to look into potential reasons and mechanisms by which we could find that there's material evidence of our connection to the stars and why astrology might work. But the true reason I believe that astrology works, and I think this is the mechanism by which ancient writers would probably argue it worked, is by means of consciousness. So what do I mean by that? Consciousness. How is consciousness a mechanism? It's not a mechanism. Consciousness is pervasive. Consciousness is what we are. We partake in a greater consciousness, which is universal. Our consciousness is a microcosm of the macrocosm of the universal mind, as is said in the Hermetic writings. So, what does that mean? Does that tell us how astrology works? Actually, it does tell us how astrology works. We are all clued into the natural processes because we are of nature. Our mind is of nature. Our consciousness is of nature. It is not different than nature. Humanity has a particularly interesting relationship to the universal mind because we have presumably we are the creature that can imagine, that can project ourselves into the world mentally in a way that perhaps other animals here cannot. But we don't know their consciousness, so we can't ever say that for sure. So by partaking of the universal mind, we can figure out, and we have documented these various natural laws or mechanisms of correlation and vibration and gender, and all of the seven principles of Hermeticism that basically can be used or are being used by the universe to tell us what it is doing and how it is working. And neutrinos are certainly a possibility. I don't, this is not in any way to disparage or to make light of potential scientific methodology or mechanisms for how astrology might work. I actually encourage people to engage in this because what we really are doing is sort of widening our net of metaphors here that can be used to help us create a better understanding of the world. But we also need to understand that consciousness is not mechanistic. That consciousness is not data. It's not an aggregation of data. Consciousness is something much more mysterious, much bigger, and very much universal. Not that data has no part in this, because data is a significant part of this, but it will never, ever be consciousness. There is no true artificial intelligence that could ever equal or in any way be capable of replicating consciousness. Michael Tsarian is doing a bunch of podcasts on the topic of artificial intelligence recently, and I've spoken about this in the past. Artificial intelligence is simply an aggregation of data, and it's riding on algorithms that are written to perform certain ways, and Michael says that artificial intelligence is a descriptor of human intelligence that is no longer connected to source, essentially, to nature. That then it becomes artificial. Like machine intelligence is always, by definition, that is artificial. And the danger truly is of humanity losing connection to source, and therefore our intelligence becoming completely artificial. So that is certainly the greatest danger for humanity. The thing about that, of course, is that nature provides consequence for our willful ignorance or attempts to subvert and undermine the natural law. It will come back and bite us in the ass when we ignore it, when we fail to abide by its clear feedback that it's giving through our personal hormones, our processes internal to our body, our biological reality. When we start to ignore that, it will have harsh repercussions. When we ignore our intuition and what we know through our most basic gut understanding of the world, when we ignore that, we become sick. So ultimately, all this artificial intelligence, it's simply a degradation of our body-mind. It's nothing else. It's smoke and mirrors, and it will, just as when we ignore natural law, when we ignore the consequence of sticking our hand into a fire, we get burned, and that is what happens, and people die, and people get maimed, and they become basically like children who cannot and will not willfully navigate the world as it is. So the people who bring us this artificial intelligence, they are trying to bring some sort of artificial voice of God. They at this point they know that the dictator, the cult of personality, has limitations, whereas the cult of GPT, ChatGPT, or OpenAI, or whatever, this is masquerading as being something that's machine learning, that it's entirely neutral. It's going to give your child its own individual tutor, which is entirely without a human conscience or any type of actual moral guidance. Only whatever is written into the code, which, as we see clearly is being written to be woke and to have leftist, collectivist, anti-human, anti-biological reality bias, which again will lead to this destruction of the human body and the human mind, which they can then put us into 15-minute cities and corral us for our own safety, because they've made us into perpetual children, idiots that cannot reason for ourselves, who are completely worshipful of any kind of authority that masquerades as science or as something for the greater good. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and all these other sustainability and other nonsense, which are pure Orwellian doublespeak. That's gone a bit far afield from the original question of how does astrology work and neutrinos, but it actually, in some ways, does not go far afield at all, because this is back to consciousness and how consciousness operates. There is no mechanism. There is ultimately no mechanism. We can, the neutrino idea is a great one, and we can certainly pursue that, because it's potentially reading one or more of these basic principles through possibly an observable channel. But it's really just doubling down. If it's done properly, it's doubling down on these basic principles, which we already know through other means. So that's it for right now. That's my feelings about neutrinos, and it all comes back to consciousness, and it all comes back to us embracing consciousness, our own consciousness, and moving into the power of our own consciousness as it is, and not running away from it, not looking externally for sources of power, of alleged authority to tell us who and what we are. And that is the principle of paganism, as I see it, is to bring everything back to its most natural and basic source, to reorient the human towards nature first. Nature first, and then from there we build our understanding of how we should interact with each other with the greatest respect and understanding of our capacities. And that is it for now. I'm at michaelmsuter.com. I will be coming out with a new astrology class, which is called the Persephone Zodiac, which is all about how I believe there's a metaphorical framework in the Zodiac, which is entirely based on the seasons. It regards each of the archetypal rulers as of the signs, the 7 planets, as basically caretakers of the fertile year. Each of the archetypes interacts with the goddess, who is somatic material intelligence, the embodiment of creation. And these archetypes are human, human consciousness in its various phases, doing what it needs to do in order to ensure survival and ensure that we are able to thrive through cycles of adversity and through cycles of abundance. So again, you'll be able to find that course and sign up for it. It's probably going to launch in September, and I will hopefully have all the details together mid to late August. I'm quite busy with other things right now, but this, I promise, will be ready soon. Again, michaelmsuter.com. This is Diamond Seed Astrology. Thank you.